This is the August 2025 edition of the TM Editor Office Hour. If you have any questions or would like to share anything, you're welcome to do so at any time. The floor is yours. That means more people are interested in the tourism phenomenon, more people are doing tourism research, not only scholars from the traditional tourism field, but also from many different disciplinary from different departments and different schools. So it is a phenomenon attracting more and more attention. On the other hand, we rather have better quality submissions, but fewer submissions because more submissions do mean more work for the editorial team. And unfortunately, a large portion of the submissions are rejected, and we don't like that. So again, that goes back to the same message that make sure when you submit your paper, you get the paper to the best state as you can. Consult with your peers, your colleagues, your mentor, or other team members to make sure that you submit the best paper you can, so that your paper get a chance of going through the process. That will be a win-win situation for everyone. That will be a win-win situation. That will be a winning situation for the authors. You get to go through the review process, and that will be a winning process for the editorial team because we only get to see the best papers, and winning situation for the reviewers because they get to review good papers, which is much easier to do than reviewing a paper that has a lot of issues that they have to point out. So please do submit your best work because you only get one opportunity with each journal. So it is very important. We talked about various research methods in previous webinars or editor office hours. We see more and more studies collect data online. I'm not talking about big data, like social media data or other forms of big data, secondary data. But for primary data collection, we see less and less primary data collection taking place in the field. We see fewer and fewer researchers actually going out to the field to collect data, whether it's through qualitative or quantitative, whether it's experiment, whether it's interview, focus group. We see more and more online data collection. Yes, it is much easier, faster, more convenient, less costly to collect data online. That's certainly you can argue for the quality, validity, and all that with online data, but for a certain extent, there is some limitations with online panel or online sources of data collection. So we would strongly encourage, if you especially have multi-study in one paper, we will strongly encourage you to have a combination if you want to do online data collection, but at least you have some part of the study, the big study, you want to have some part of your data collected in the field, whether it's at the tourist attraction, whether it's in a hotel, whether, from real people. We see fewer and fewer articles having data from real people. Some reviewers mentioned that because with online, regardless how much you try to have quota sampling or you set up different criterias, still there are limitations because you don't get to see them, and very often, especially for experimental design studies, then you will set up the scenarios, and very often starting with this statement, imagine you're doing this, imagine you're in that particular location. How much or to what extent people can really imagine, that's a question. So I'm not saying online data collection is completely invalid, but it will be helpful to have some offline data to triangulate the results. At least you show the reviewers that regardless of the platform that you use, you get the same results, and that will help you establish the external validity of the results of your study. So if you can have some field observation or field data collection, that will be extremely valuable. Especially nowadays, we see a lot of completely online studies. There's a statement in the chat box. I've been reading several papers from tourism management and find them highly insightful. As a travel agency operator, I'm curious to how we can contribute to academic research in tourism. Actually, what are the best ways for practitioners like us to connect and collaborate with tourism researchers? Well, thank you for attending this webinar. It's great to have a practitioner taking interest in academic research. I would suggest you to approach researchers in your local university, local institutions, see how you can collaborate. Very often, academics are having the same question: how can we find industry practitioners that we can collaborate with? The reason why a lot of the studies are conducted online now is because they don't have access to operators. They don't have access to, for example, travel agencies. So it will be a win-win situation, really, if the two can collaborate. One will provide, for example, operational data or access to customers or access to managers or employees. That will be really helpful for academic researchers. Plus, it will be really helpful for the academics to show the practitioners, okay, this is what I'm thinking about. This is my research idea. Do you think it will be useful? So the practitioners will be the best judge whether this piece of research has any value, if it's worth doing. That will be the first step. I always encourage, especially early career researchers, don't come up with research questions in your office or in your dorm room. You always have to go out and talk to the management or consumers, whatever topic that you're thinking about, to make sure that what you do actually solve a real life issue. And nobody can be the best judge. Nobody can be a better judge than those who are actually working in the industry. So I see a lot of potential. Actually, it was just yesterday or today I received a submission of the list of authors. Actually, we have practitioners. I've seen one of the authors is actually a hotel manager, and that is certainly a plus in terms of the team. In terms of the balance, for example, very often practitioners have insights that academics do not have. Therefore, it will be great. So I would suggest the first step is to talk to any academics you know, and especially if you have an issue that you would like to address, you would like to get resolved. Take that problem to an academic and see, can you help me, or can we solve this problem together to co-create that research process? That would be very much welcomed.
Actually contacted a professor from a local university in Vietnam, and we invited her to join one of our walking tours.
Good.
And
And
then,
yeah.
yeah, and then we're looking forward to other opportunities to connect with her students if they wanted to have interns.
Yeah, yeah. So it would be great if you can suggest some topics that they can investigate. Any issues that you face on a daily basis, whether it's with your employees or with your customers or with the products that you offer. Give them the question and ask them to come and help you solve the issue. Right. The message is that recently on social media platform like RedNote, I've seen post with translated or summarized version of the paper in Chinese, especially highlighted theoretical practical implications to inform general public to gain knowledge and guidance from the paper. What's your perspective on this? And do content creators need obtain consent from the journal or the author when using the paper as the basis for social media content creation? Actually, if they credit the source, that is okay. If they say this is based on this particular paper and they provide the source of the paper, that is perfectly okay. We encourage the authors actually to do that. And that's one way of disseminating research results. That helps with the impact of the study that you conduct. So not only we encourage the authors to do that, to post it on social media, to summarize the findings, but anybody see the post can repost, and therefore that will increase the circulation of the message. And so nowadays it's not only about research, but also the real life impact after research. So as long as they indicate the source, like just providing not necessarily in any particular referencing format, but as long as they identify the source, it should be okay. They're actually doing a service to the authors and to the journal. As long as they translate and summarize correctly. If the authors find the information is not correct, then obviously there is an issue that needs to be resolved with the person who created the post. Right, the next question is, could you share some interesting topics? I guess we can go through the table of content of the recently published papers, but we've seen quite a lot of very interesting topics, actually. Other than AI, everybody, or at least 50% of the population seems to be doing study related to AI. But there are a lot of interesting studies. For example, recently we've seen and quite a few numbers of studies focusing on women, whether it's women traveler, women entrepreneurs, especially in rural areas, the decision-making process, their support barriers, and women travelers in terms of their interaction with local residents and how other people look at women, single women travelers. So that's one research area that we've seen a growing interest. And of course, we just had a special issue on mental health and tourism, and that could be a very, I wouldn't say interesting, but important topic to investigate. People with disability, some sorts of physical, mental challenges. That will be an important topic to investigate. But there are challenges in terms of data collection. Crisis management, it was a big thing a couple years ago, obviously because of the COVID, but now we still some crisis management research, but taking a broader perspective. It's more than just a health crisis. It could be climate change, it could be violence, it could be anything that's happening that is considered as a crisis. So there are really a few, and then in the HR area, recently there is a study published on using people who have served present terms as the sample, talk about their rehabilitation, and then after they finish their prison term, how can we help them, train them, and maybe some of them could be suitable for the hospitality and tourism industry. At the same time, solving the labor shortage issue. So it helps those who made a mistake earlier in their life and now re-enter into the society, and at the same time helping with the labor force issue. So there are many interesting topics If you just go through the table of content, I think you will see some of them are quite intriguing. The next question is, could you share some common problems or rejection reasons of literature review and conceptual papers submitted to tourism management? Tourism management does not publish conceptual papers. The only category that tourism management accepts conceptual papers is research notes. Otherwise, full-length articles need to be empirical. In other words, we need data collection. We need to make sure that the data collection process is rigorous and also multiple sources of data to establish external validity. Because for all the full-length articles, we require a impact statement, right? Impact statement meaning the so what. After conducting this research, what will be the societal, economic, cultural, consumer impact that this particular piece of study has beyond academia. So before you tell the hotel manager, before you tell the tour operator, this is what you should do when you lead a tour, when you market your product, before you can say that in confidence, you need to have strong data support. You have to make sure that your finding is not just by chance. So if you can establish external validity by multiple sources of data, then you can say that with more confidence. Of course, we can never be 100% confident because even though you have 2 sources, 3 sources of data, chances are a slight chance is still there that your finding is not 100% correct. But at least you increase your chance. So that's the reason tourism management does not take conceptual paper for full-length article, simply because conceptual papers are usually discussed at a theoretical level. You bring up a new concept, you develop conceptual framework, but based on the conceptual framework, it's hard to suggest or solve any real life issue. That's more of an academic exercise. But for research note, it is possible to have conceptual papers. In terms of literature review, again, tourism management does not publish bibliometric or systematic literature review. The progress category, we do have a category for progress in tourism research. Papers published under that category is of narrative review in nature. Not systematic metric. Systematic review can be part of that, but it's not purely systematic review. So that's the general situation with tourism management. We had a webinar a few months back about how to write a narrative review. So if you're interested, you can look back on that particular webinar. The speakers there did a very thorough explanation of how to write a narrative review. So it's not just about counting how many people has done this or what methods they've used, what theories that they adopted. It's more of summarizing on a theoretical level on this particular topic, what has been researched, what do we know, and what should be the future. So there is a webinar on that. The next question is, I have a master's student from Nepal. Would you please share some topics in this area? If I understand you correctly, you mean research topic related to Nepal? I guess a country or a city or anywhere or an industry is just a study context. Any study will need to have a study context, whether it's in Nepal or India or China or Brazil. It's just a study context. So it's not really a research topic. Again, the research topic should come from the industry, should come from real life. So whatever issue you see, for example, in Nepal, what is the most important issue facing the tourism industry then that will be worthy of investigation. Whether it's about rural tourism, whether it's about entrepreneurship, whether it's about environmental sustainability, whether it's about economic development. Again, in the city versus up in the mountains, then they will be facing different issues as well. So try to think from an issue perspective rather than from a context perspective. We do have a number of recordings posted on YouTube and Bilibili. I understand the office hour is difficult to go back and search, but for the webinar, if you're interested in particular topics, I think the webinars are very helpful. Like I mentioned, we have one webinar on how to write narrative review. We also have two webinars actually on what is theory, how to theorize for tourism research, and what constitutes theoretical contribution. We have another webinar on innovative research ideas. What is innovation and how do you come up with innovative research ideas? So we have quite a few very interesting webinars in the past. You're welcome to take a look at them. And we have one webinar on how to address reviewer comments and another webinar on how to be a good reviewer, which is very important as well. So they're all available online. And they are 1 hour probably each, less than 1 hour. The next question is, I plan to work on the tourism route design problem to maximize tourist experience. For the tourist experience modeling, I may consider some customer psychology effects and plan to use exact algorithm for solving this NP hard problem. I was wondering if the topic might be favored. What aspect of this topic could be elevated or enhanced? I also suggestion. Okay. The topic is fine. I mentioned very often we don't select topics. We select paper based on quality. We select paper based on two criteria. One is the methodology quality, and then the theoretical contribution. So you have to have a strong theoretical foundation for your modeling. I will assume you will have a framework, or you will have different variables in the model, and you talk about customer psychology effects, so there must be some variables in your model or study. Then the selection of variables, and I don't know if you plan to have any hypotheses. If you do have hypotheses, all the hypotheses need to be supported by theory. So you have a strong theoretical underpinning, and then at the end, what contributions does your study make to enhance any shortcomings of existing theories? That will be the second criteria. So a strong methodology is the basic that we look at, and then beyond that, it's the theoretical contribution. Or if you have a purely methodological piece, then, for example, you have a new methodology that you propose, nobody else has done it before. This is an advancement of methodology, and that will be a contribution as well. If you simply use an existing methodology even from a different discipline, nobody has used it in tourism before, that doesn't count, right? Because the methodology already existed, whether it's in statistics, computer science, or other discipline, you simply use an existing method in a new context, then that is still applied empirical. Same thing with theories. If you use a theory, that long-standing theory that has been widely adopted and well accepted, and everybody think it's a good theory, simply apply that to a tourism context, then it will be difficult to argue for theoretical contribution. So in the literature review, you need to identify the theoretical underpinning, and at the same time, any shortcoming or any gaps that you identify, and then how can you study contribute to fill that gap? So topic is fine. We don't select topics. It's your job to select topics. Make sure you go back to your literature review earlier in the paper to see the gaps that you identified, and then you summarize how this study addressed that gap. You identify a theory and saying this theory is not covering this particular area, therefore you need to conduct the study. And then at the end of the paper, when you talk about implication, make sure you come back to the earlier statement that you made. What is the gap, and then how can your study contribute to the advancement of that? Please don't just say this is the first study to do this. Nobody has done it before. That is not a contribution theoretically. That is a contribution empirically. So depending on which journal you want to submit, some journals are positioned to publish empirical papers. If that's the case, then you say this is the first time this phenomenon has been uncovered, for example. Nobody has looked at this population, and this is the first study to provide evidence that this type of people prefer this type of service, then that will be empirical evidence. That is fine for journals that position to publish empirical studies, but for journals that position to publish articles that makes theoretical contribution, then you have to talk about what theoretical contributions that you make. So go back to your original earlier literature review, the gaps that you identify, and how did your study make that particular theory better, and how do you address that gap? Again, we've seen a lot of authors saying one of the contribution is we introduce a moderator, we introduce a mediator. By itself, it may not be a theoretical contribution. It depends on how you identify the moderator and how you identify the mediator. If you simply want to look at this particular moderator and you pull that operator out of thin air without any reason, then it's quite arbitrary, right? So you need to have a good theoretical underpinning in terms of the selection of variable as the proposing of your hypothesis. Then at the end, it will be easier for you to go for full circle. You raise the problem, you go through the methodology, and then at the end, how do you solve that problem? So again, it's the completeness, the consistency of your storyline from the very beginning to the very end. Right, the next question is, how should authors choose the target journal from TM, JTR, and Annals? That's a tough question. What are the unique features of TM that making the author's prioritized choice for contribution? Well, I'm not sure it's the prioritized choice. I don't think everybody wants to send their papers to TM. You have to look at the scope. Each journal lists the scope and positioning of the journal on their website. Different people have different perceptions. You just need to talk to more experienced researchers. For me, tourism management is a management journal. So anything related to management of tourism and tourism related sectors or phenomenon. But of course, management is a broad term that includes many different functional areas and different topics. And another way, in addition to look at the website, is to look at the articles that they published. Please make sure that you read a few articles published in the journal before you submit your paper to that particular journal. I wouldn't say very often, but quite often, we see papers submitted to tourism management, for example, and they don't cite any paper. In the list of references, there's no reference cited from tourism management. I don't know if it's because there's nothing published on the topic that you investigate that has ever been published in tourism management, or it's simply because this paper was rejected somewhere else, originally designed for another journal, and it didn't make it, therefore resubmitted to tourism management without really understanding the scope of tourism management. So make sure you read the website positioning statement of the journal and read a few prior issues of the journal and get a sense of the type of paper that they publish before you submit a paper to that particular journal. All right, the next question is, since tourism management introduced the register reports format, have you noticed submission coming in under this model? If so, what have been the common issues leading to their rejection? That's a good question. We do see a few papers submitted to the register reports category. I just looked it up the other day. I think there are 2 or 3 remain, there 2 or 3 active in the system, not a whole lot. What have been the common issues leading to their rejection? That I don't know on the top of my head. I have to go back and look at because Professor Robert Lee is the one who handles those submissions. But I would imagine it's very similar to the other types of papers. It basically, again, the stage 1 is basically a proposal, right? You have your theoretical framework, you have your proposed methodology. So the reviewers will look at whether the framework is set up properly and whether the methodology is rigorous. But I have to look into the reviewer report to answer your question properly. Sorry. Another question is, I previously read in the submission guidelines that tourism management generally refuses to rely on single cross-sectional data. I would like to know some ways to improve. For instance, I collected data 2 to 3 times in different cases to verify the research hypothesis and model I propose in this. Is this enhancement effective for tourism management? Right, because it goes to the external validity issue. You need different sources of data to show that your hypothesis actually can be supported. Therefore, to make the results more trustworthy. That's the whole purpose of having multiple sources of data. Cross-sectional data very likely to suffer from various bias. If you collect data 3 times in different cases, so meaning you have different samples, yes, if you collect data from different samples, that will count as multiple sources of data. But I've seen studies collected data in multiple waves. For example, there is a time duration between wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, but you have the same sample. That will not solve the external validity problem. It will solve probably the single method bias problem, but it will not solve the external validity issue. And also it varies. I will assume you're talking about quantitative studies, survey-based quantitative studies. Then we do like to have multiple sources of data, meaning multiple samples, or you have one survey, one experiment, one qualitative, one big data. That could count as multiple sources of data as well. Another situation that we have seen with multiple sources of data is they collected, for example, they use the same survey, they collected the data from 2 different locations, but when they do the data analysis, they merge the data. In other words, their model, their hypotheses only get tested once. That still doesn't address the external validity issue, right? The external validity issue means each and every one of the hypotheses or the model that you propose can pass the test multiple times. question is, in terms of publication, should we prepare the article for the targeted journal for exam writing style? Yes, of course. Make sure that your submission fits the particular journal that you submit. And that's why I say you want to make sure that you do the best you can, not only in terms of the quality of the paper, but because different journals have different requirements. If your paper unfortunately get rejected by one journal, you have to reformat. For example, different journals have different requirements for maximum word count. If you get rejected by one journal that has a word count of 10,000 and you try to resubmit to another journal that has a word count of 9,000, then you have to reduce the paper by 1,000 word. So that takes a lot of work to do. And some journals require you to insert all the tables and figures in text. Others ask you to put them at the end of the manuscript. And tourism management, we require an impact statement. Some other journals will require bullet point highlights. Different journals will have different word limit for abstract. So yeah, make sure you read the guide to authors for each journal specifically. It sounds, I can't make a judgment based on abstract alone, because when we review paper, we read the whole paper rather than the abstract. So I don't know how truly reflective your abstract is to the entire paper, but it reads more like an empirical study than a study that will make theoretical contribution based on a model. But then you don't say how does the study enhance the model, or what is the shortcoming of the model, and what contribution you make to theoretical advancement. But like I said, usually the decision is based on reviewing the entire manuscript rather than based on the abstract alone. Although abstract is absolutely important. That's the first thing people read. Once they read your abstract, they will form an initial judgment to be verified by later part of the paper. So make sure you have a good abstract that can be truly representative of the value of the study. Right. The question is, I'm curious, when presenting unpublished idea at academic conferences, to what extent are the ideas considered shared, and what measures can be taken to provide intellectual contribution from being published by others? I think we discussed this last time, maybe last month or the month before. It does happen, unfortunately, but I wouldn't let that discourage you to attend conferences and to present your ideas, because at conferences, when you talk to others will help you think about other issues that you haven't thought about. It's actually a good time to present your unfinished study so that you can get people's suggestions. Rather than you finish everything and then if you want to change anything, that will be too late, because at conferences, usually people are very collegial and give you very constructive comments. If unfortunately you meet somebody who does not adhere to professional ethics, then that's very unfortunate, nothing we can do. Occasionally it does happen, but broadly, I wouldn't discourage you to share ideas. And very often at conferences, we present studies that are ongoing, and to seek ideas from others. If a submission is rejected by AE who have developed and rejected based on some misperceptions on the research design, are authors encouraged to appeal for that? If you really think they misunderstood, you're welcome to communicate with them. I don't know if it's the way that's presented Very often reviewers will say this is not clear, or reviewers sometimes could misunderstand what you mean. But then you have to think, is it because the way I write? Is it because I didn't express myself clearly? In the response to reviewers, if, for example, reviewer say something and you were like, no, that's not what we're saying, chances are you didn't express yourself clearly. So I in this particular situation, I don't know which is true. Is because the AE did not understand what you're saying because he or she did not read it closely, or is it because you didn't express it clearly? So we'll have to look at that case by case. But of course, if you don't think they understood you or they misinterpret, you're welcome to communicate with the AE.